Es ist ein Tätigkeitskatalog.
It's a catalogue of activities from the early phase in the execution of the engineering right through to the handover of the project to the customer, which lists the most significant measures which, together with keeping to schedule, is important for good quality management.
Qualitätssicherung in Verbindung auch mit Zeiteinhaltung wichtig ist.
Wir sehen natürlich oft aufgrund unserer Erfahrung, dass
Based on our experience, projects need a holistic approach because ultimate success is only achieved when we are on board with the project from the beginning.
Aus unserer Sicht, wenn wir von Anfang an im Projekt mit dabei sind.
The Q7 concept stands for a holistic approach to project execution, so it can also be used to manage the project.
Zu steuern.
Was wir auch oft beobachten in Projekten.
What we also often see in a project, if it's managed by the operator, is that it doesn't work out because the different departments don't communicate properly with each other. Quality management should be the key to connecting up the various departments.
Der Schlüssel sein zur Verbindung zwischen den Abteilungen.
We create continuity, information flow, and above all, experience feedback. We take responsibility for the duration of the project as far as quality and keeping to schedule are concerned.
Einhaltung betrifft. Unter Designprüfung verstehen wir
Design checking means construction consultations with an eye to completion, bringing in the experience from constructions we've supervised in the past, testing the producibility and, where possible, also the later installability.
Installierbarkeit prüfen. Ja.
Wir gehen dann lieber gern noch mit
We go in deep and examine the welding process, look at the concept of the welding technology, the testability of the products, as well as the possibility of coating.
Die Möglichkeit der Beschichtung.
Wir betreiben aktive Lieferantenauswahl.
We have a policy of active supplier selection, supplier evaluation with audits, of course. We do it internationally. We look outside Europe. Which suppliers are good? We check to see what equipment and what spatial conditions the suppliers have, above all for large facilities where large components have to be manufactured. And that's done via systematic audits.
Vor allen Dingen über systematische Audits.
Wichtig ist natürlich auch, ob die
It's also important to know if the manufacturer adheres to the required standards and can produce accordingly.
das entsprechend herzustellen zu können. Ja.
Grünes Licht.
We give the green light when the manufacturer has been evaluated, when the audits have been successfully completed, when the audits have been evaluated. Then comes the order process after the selection, and we have kick-off meetings.
Und solche Kick-offs machen wir am liebsten zusammen.
We have these kick-offs preferably with the operator or the end customer to make sure that the relevant components will be procured as they should be.
Werden, wie es sein soll.
Es gibt Leistungsverzeichnisse.
There are specifications, there are design documents according to which tenders are offered. This call to tender is already about choosing suppliers. If we can put together a good quality concept in this phase, a schedule to accompany the quality concept and the manufacturer, which has reserves and isn't already at this stage touch and go, that would mean worrying from the word go about whether we can deliver. If the factors engineering, quality control, time management, costs, if all these are already in harmony in this phase, then the project's off to a good start.
Fängt ein Projekt schon mal gut an. Grundsätzlich geht es permanente Überwachung, Zwischeninspektionen.
Basically, we're talking about permanent monitoring, interim inspections, regular inspections. Test plan steps are fulfilled, quality plans are worked through as required. And when assembly begins, then we're there permanently to optimize the process, to monitor the process, to supervise and manage steps in the assembly process, and spot problems regarding welding technology, coating, regarding the assembly in general.
In puncto Fertigung überhaupt, oder?
Ja, im Prinzip sind wir relativ stahlbaulastig unterwegs, was die Branchen betrifft.
In principle, we're involved in many different industries, starting with renewable energy, wind turbines, for example, but also in conventional plant construction, where there's a lot of steel construction involved, but also components like pipes, like boilers, like valves to be employed there.
Wie Rohrleitungen, wie Kessel, wie Ventile, alles die Komponenten, die natürlich dort zum Einsatz kommen.
Anlagenbau sind immer
In
Stahlbau.
plant construction, there are always steel components, and also in the field of wind offshore, where we're currently very active, there's a lot of steel involved. Steel for the towers, steel for the foundations, just like in the onshore field. In the construction of conventional power plants, oil-fired power stations and waste-to-energy plants. It's a matter of constructing and assembling a plant in such a way that it fulfills the standards, the relative guidelines we know in Europe, but also in those parts of the world with different requirements.
Ähnlichen Richtlinien entsprechen. Ganz klassisch über Wochenreports.
In the usual way, weekly reports, inspection reports, reports from regular meetings that are on file, our own digital file, or we use the customer's databank.
Wir nutzen die Ablagedatenbank vom Kunden.
The documentation is a process. The documents are constantly being updated.
Ja, es ist ein laufender Abgleich.
It's an ongoing process of adjustment. It begins during assembly and continues during production. There's constant alignment, and at the end we have a complete documentation. Documentation experts are the main participants, experts in the field of documentation, who know what points are important, who know the test values, who also know the components. People who come from the practical side.
Auch kennen, die auch aus der Praxis kommen.
Wirklich nicht zu vergessen, wie steht der Kunde.
It's important for customers to be able to build it into their documentation management program. That means preparing the documents in a customer-friendly way.
Die auch entsprechend eingebaut werden können.
Praktisch gesehen kann man
From a practical point of view, we can talk about events that often reoccur when it's a matter of asking, what sort of document am I holding? Is it a certificate? Is it a genuine certificate? All over the world you're faced with different situations, so it's important when you're looking at the documentation to check what you're looking
habe
at.
ich hier für ein Papier vor mir. Vor dem Transport ist nach der Fertigung.
Before transportation, after completion, we do a final inspection, a final acceptance test. Transportation means it leaves the manufacturer where it was produced. Final inspection means checking everything again. Is everything in place? Is everything in order? Nothing needs to be reworked. Reworking is more expensive on the construction site than at the manufacturer. And then, of course, there's the pre-shipment inspection, transport inspection. How is everything packed? Can it be transported as it is without getting damaged? Depending on the product, completeness checks like this are very extensive.
Zum Teil sehr umfangreich.
Es kommt natürlich immer darauf an, was man mit dem Kunde auch vereinbart hat.
It always depends what's been agreed with the customer. Does the manufacturing documentation have to be supplied with the protocol, or does it have to be supplied in advance to check if the delivery corresponds to what was ordered?
Alles schön vollständig ist, ob der Lieferumfang wirklich dem entspricht, was eigentlich bestellt wurde.
Letztlich bleibt noch
Finally, we have to check how the transportation should be carried out. Are there special factors perhaps with the packing, depending on whether it's going by sea, by air or by rail, that we should take into account?
achten.
Oft werden Dinge verpackt, nicht sicher verpackt.
Often things are packed up and we're there to see that security and safety are ensured, depending on where it's going to be transported and how.
Und, je nachdem, wo es hin, dass es transportiert werden muss.
Vorausgehend des Ganzen.
Right at the very beginning, there's a kick-off meeting, a construction site kick-off meeting. Everything that's needed for the construction site. How is the site organized? Who are the partners involved? And of course later on, when the construction site starts up, when the first deliveries arrive.
Die Sache über.
Wareneingangsprüfungen durchgeführt.
We have incoming goods inspections when we check if all the necessary components needed for the assembly are present, if they're all on the construction site and ready for deployment.
Schon einsetzbar sind.
Just to say, we'll do a delivery check isn't on. We have to judge where we trust the customer, where we trust the installation partners that everything will come, and where we actually have to turn up in person to see that all the components are there.
Die Checklisten können je nachdem auch entweder vom Hersteller kommen oder von der
The
Montagefirma.
checklists are either from the manufacturer or from the assembly company or from the customer, and they're used for the incoming goods check. Ultimately, it's all about finding a common level. We mediate between the levels and try to find a common denominator to ensure that the corresponding products are on site, ready for use. Here, we're happy to take the position of the customer.
Wobei wir natürlich gern die Position des Kunden übernehmen.
Und mit dieser Montage.
And with this assembly and construction supervision, we ensure that the project in this phase is managed properly in terms of time, assembly time, completion time, so that we remain on schedule, combined with the proper construction site quality management. With deliveries, it's important that we consider how the trucks get onto the site, where they can unload, where things can be stored. You have to bear in mind the weather conditions, possible transportation damage, which occurs when the delivery is not properly organized. Incoming goods check, wherever possible, in optimal form.
Möglich ist und in optimierter Form. Ja.
Clearly, the mechanical activities, along with the electrical activities, everything that is involved in pre-assembly that affects the plant assembly itself, right up to the cold commissioning.
Auch wieder schweißtechnisch.
Switching technology monitoring, test monitoring, coating monitoring, that's what we concentrate on.
Ganz stark in dem Bereich.
Wenn wir hier von Montage.
When we talk about assembly and commissioning, when we talk about installation, then we're talking about plants that are built in the countryside, like classic power stations or bridge building projects, but also renewable energies like offshore wind plants. That's a field we're very active in.
Wir betreiben diese Phase auch.
Ein Punkt ist natürlich die Montage.
One point is, of course, assembly on site. What are the conditions on the construction site? How can we incorporate it? Interfering edges are an important topic. Execution of welding work is important. Independent of the whole mechanical assembly, the task of getting the right tools in the right
Die
place.
Werkzeuge an den entsprechenden Ort zu bringen.
Und was vielleicht noch auch als Beispiel betrachtet werden kann.
And what might serve as an example, we have an ongoing project where work is being carried out on an operational plant, a power plant. It's important to always keep that in mind so that the day-to-day running isn't disturbed. There's a phase when both the boiler assembly is taking place and at the same time the expansion of the shell construction is going on. The roof then has to be put in place and the crane lifts have to be coordinated, and this coordination is something that makes a large contribution to the quality management, the project management and the technical quality management, where the scheduling plays a part, and we have to keep all of this in mind. If each person only sees their own activities, they won't make any progress. It has to be unified. And the better that works, in terms of quality, in terms of time, in terms of project management, the better the project works.
Desto besser läuft auch dieses Projekt. Ja. Ja, generell geht es jetzt hier um das.
Generally, it's the management and planning of approval tests, of inspections, of plant inspections. Performance tests of the plant are planned for the hot commissioning phase, and we accompany them in scheduled test steps.
Schritten auch begleitet von uns.
Und falls es Bei solchen Endabnahmen
Should there be unresolved points at the final approval stage, then there's a punch list made. That happens at the approval stage, and then we work through them.
Inspektionen, und die werden wir dann abarbeiten und weiterhin begleiten.
In Zusammenarbeit werden wir sie abarbeiten, je nachdem, wo sie liegen.
We work through them together, depending on what's involved. One example, we were called to a project in Phase 6, erection and commissioning, when commissioning was already in progress.
Es gab ein großes Missverständnis zwischen Kunde und Hersteller.
As a result of a miscommunication between the customer and the plant builder, the project was delayed by a year. We put together a list of points which ended up as a 52-page document. We worked through the majority of these points and were finally able to conduct approval tests on the project.
Und haben tatsächlich das Projekt zum provisorischen.
Again and again, we see how important communication is for all phases. If the quality of communication isn't good, it results in delays. Simple cause, big effect.
Dann kommt es zu Verspätungen. Simple Ursache, große Wirkung. So kann man das benennen.